Hello, freshmen. Here we are, in which we're going to take a look at specific geographic features, physical features around the world. But specifically in this particular, for this particular assignment, we're going to look at the generalities that we can when we look at different parts of the world and the different physical features and how humans can adapt to their environment and how their environment can impact their lives. So you'll have a sheet that resembles what you see here, and only you will not have the pictures. You will have this handout eventually. But to start the assignment, you're going to do this with my pictures that I have here and on the note sheet without the pictures, and then we'll kind of come together in class like we normally do. First, we'll start with islands. And again, the impact of living on, near, or around the islands. You can see the size of these islands. These are a little bit more remote. These are islands off the coast of Japan, off the major islands off the coast of Japan. These are smaller ones. These are islands in Venice. This is the island of Venice, and you can see how an island can be remote, but it can also be very populated, as you see here. So I want you to think about what are some of the impacts of living on, near, or around this and how people have adapted. And you can see some of those adaptations here. I'm not going to come out and say them. We're going to try to discover this together in class. But I want you to think about weather and what type of weather you might see here. Or during a battle, maybe not now, but in ancient history, during a battle, what might be the advantages or disadvantages? Farming. What sorts of industries or economies would these places have? I want you to think about all of this as we look at these specific features. So here are islands, and you can see some nice pictures and connections there. So as we move down to deserts, these are two pictures of the Sahara. And this is, again, a remote area of the Sahara. And I chose this picture for a specific reason. We're going to talk about that adaptation. And this is kind of another way that people live in the desert. And we think that sometimes the desert doesn't have any sort of life in it until we get to the vegetation points. Again, this is the Sahara, and this is an oasis point in the Sahara. And you can see it's lived in. There's definitely structures there. And there's water sources. And we'll talk about all of this. But I do want you to think of, again, the weather, the adaptations, the clothing, the economies. All of those things do, you can make deductions from the geography. And we talked about this in class. Geography is the first determinant of how people live, and geography is the first determinant of how their cultures are shaped as well. Moving on to mountains. Here we have three different mountain ranges in different parts of the world. The first is the Himalayas, and I chose this picture specifically to show you the climate change that you're going to see from this elevation point to this elevation point. The Himalayas are a vast mountain range, or a rugged mountain range that borders the northern part of India, and they've isolated. And mountains in general do isolate, just like any sort of physical feature that will be a barrier to groups of people, they're going to isolate as mountains. Mountains are probably the number one isolating physical feature that we are going to talk about. But they don't always isolate for everybody, and we're going to talk about how people have adapted to that. Again, I want you to think about adaptations. I want you to think about how agriculture, economy, social networks, and how people would work to be part of a civilization here without the computer. When I say social networks, I don't mean with the computer. We move over here. This is Machu Picchu, so this should lend you to some of the adaptations. This is the ancient capital city of the Incans. It still stands there today. You can go visit it. And again, you see the adaptations up on the mountaintops. And to speak about adaptations, this is a mountain in Vietnam, and there's a specific adaptation that they use in order to farm in that area of the world, which we will discuss in class. If you know it already, please bring it to class. Plains. This is the Great European Plain. And we've talked about it in class, and at least this is a small picture of it. Again, I want you to think about agriculture and plains, lifestyle, how people would have to adapt their living spaces in plains, not just plains, all of these geographic features, but I want to make sure I mention things as they pop into my head. This is the Mongolian plain, and again, this should be significant for the agriculture economy of this particular area. And then these are plainlands near the Yellow River in China. Again, what is going on here? I want you to think about that and the impact of people's lives. Perhaps the lifeblood in our course are rivers, our next geographic feature. We say that because of this area right here at the mouth of all these rivers. This is the Nile River in a satellite view, but you can see the vegetation at the mouth of this river, this huge delta in Egypt. And that's going to be where we see most of the population. Rivers are the lifeblood for civilization. It allowed people to group in one place, build permanent settlements, domesticate plants and animals, continue to farm, and therefore build their population and build what we know as complex societies. The river valleys were where all of our early civilizations start. They provided them with fertile soil. But now, how do you think people are impacted by this? This is a scan in Iraq where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers actually converge. This picture, again, is a satellite image of the Nile. And this is the Huanghe River in China, or the Yellow River. And although it looks brown in this picture, it's named because of the color of the soil. If you look here on the outskirts of the river, you can see that yellow color coming out a little bit more richly there. And that's called loess. And it's a fertile soil that the people of the Yellow River would use in order to, again, have fertile soil. And also, on top of that, the Yellow River was also called the River of Sorrows because it would flood and it would actually wipe out some inhabitants and cause some major flooding issues, the issues that come along with flooding for the people of the coast of this river. But it also was their lifeblood because behind it, it left that loess, which was fertile soil. Lastly, on this particular activity, we have coastlines. And we do have coastlines like this in Morocco. When I say we, I mean the world. The world does have coastlines like this in Morocco when there's not much going on there and it's mostly scenic. But if you travel to Cape Town in Africa, you can see this coastline. And this isn't a great picture, but I wanted to kind of highlight the crowdedness. Some of these coastlines crowd people in order to live in those places because they are advantageous, or they may have the natural resources that are needed in order for people to live and flourish, both economically, socially, and politically. This is in Montreal. This is the port in Montreal, and this is another effect of living on, near, or around coastlines. And if you don't have any sort of idea here, these are rail carts, or those Connex boxes that store all sorts of goods, and you can see them stored here. And when people live on, near, or around coastlines, you generally are going to see port cities and harbors that are going to be, again, a backbone to their economy when it comes to import and export. That's the basic breakdown of it. You're going to take it a step further in class when you're going to be asked to do 5 or 6 specific things. You're going to build a poster based upon the effects of one of these physical features, and you're going to share it around the classroom. So be prepared for that. We'll see you tomorrow. Good night.